David Gura? Muir. Give me a break. There's a David Gura. God save people.
Fervent supporters in Congress had a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old girl. Congressman Matt Gaetz has never asked me for a pardon, Trump said in a written statement. It must also be remembered that he has totally denied the accusations against him. Gaetz may never have directly asked Trump for a pardon, but multiple former Trump administration officials tell ABC News that the now embattled congressman had urged the Trump White House to grant blanket preemptive pardons for Trump's political allies, including Gaetz himself. Gaetz had even talked about the idea publicly.
He should pardon everyone from himself to his administration officials to Joe Exotic. I think that the president ought to wield that pardon power effectively and robustly.
Sources familiar with the alleged request tell ABC the idea was quickly dismissed inside the White House. In a statement today, a Gaetz spokesperson said the congressman's public calls for mass pardons had nothing to do with the, quote, false and increasingly bizarre partisan allegations against him. The Department of Justice is investigating whether Gaetz had a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old girl and paid for her to travel with him, potentially violating sex trafficking laws. The investigation started last summer under Trump Attorney General Bill Barr. Despite the controversy swirling around Congressman Gaetz, he is still quite active on the Trump political circuit. In fact, he is a scheduled speaker at an event coming up this Friday at the club, at the Trump Doral Club, an event sponsored by a pro-Trump women's group that was also one of the primary sponsors of the rally that preceded the Capitol riot on January 6th. David?
All right, Jonathan Karl tonight from Washington. Thanks, John. And one more note from Washington tonight, a tribute to Capitol Police Officer William Evans, who lost his life in last Friday's attack. His body carried to the funeral home today, right past the Capitol. His fellow officers, you can see, standing in salute. Officer Evans will lie in honor in the Capitol Rotunda next Tuesday.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's #1 most watched newscast across all of television.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
what is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. It's all about you.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for Overall Excellence in Television. ABC News, America's #1 news source. Friday nights, 9/8 Central. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True Crime 2020. Friday nights, 9/8 Central on ABC.
The reality is our country can collapse from within.
You see the white power movement on the march. Klansmen and neo-Nazis, skinheads, it's meant to incite war.
From the KKK to Oklahoma City to Charlottesville, the new documentary event special.
We just need to start talking about race.
Homegrown hate, the war among us.
This is a real wake-up call.
Streaming now on ABC News Live.
Now, when it matters most, the straightforward facts. ABC News is America's #1 news. #1 in the morning, this historic election versus the competition. The #1 daytime talk show and #1 in streaming news. ABC News is America's #1 news.
People are getting sick because of coronavirus and hospitals. I mean, if coronavirus never disappeared, then we'd be in quarantine forever.
It has to be tortured as much as you can, God, as hard as you can, for as long as you can. Affirm, reaffirm. Affirm, reaffirm. To the power of an infinite number of infinities.
Downtown was a little bit boring because we didn't have school to go, and we missed our friends, our families, and everything, and that was like so boring. We just stay at home. Essa pandemia foi muito chata. Não poderia sair pra brincar nem nada. Não poderia ir no shopping nem na praia. Seeing the faces of my friends. I can only see them with the mask. I missed going at home of my friends. Even though time flew by, I felt that I did too much all last year.
While I'm talking with my teacher, I usually like to actually see her, but then in online class, her picture would sometimes get all blurry.
I can do activities at school and I can hug my classmates.
One of the things I liked about the pandemic is getting to spend a lot of time with my family.
I liked how my family could get more close since we are all stuck at home. I was able to play with my sister more. I spent more time with my family, played new games. The good things are I can hug my family. I liked staying at home with my parents and playing a lot and swimming. I like Sunday in school. That you could spend time with your family. Te gusta tirar las cosas por la mesa. I'm happy that I get to stay home and play my video games, but I'm sad that I don't get to meet my friends. But I do get to meet my friends on Zoom. I like that you could stay at home and do school in your pajamas. Something I like about the pandemic is sleeping with her, playing with my baby brother, Sia, doing online classes. Também eu ficava estudando, depois eu descansava tudo e voltava a estudar. Eu não tinha medo não. Então não tenho medo de nada.
As our nation grapples with issues of race and policing as the trial of the officer accused of killing George Floyd unfolds, we have a provocative and emotional soul of the nation dealing with the death penalty.
Jesus.
You would think that in situations where the state
Shit,
is
that's
taking the
loud.
ultimate step of taking a person's life, that the government would be meticulous. But the facts suggest a death penalty system with a serious error rate and bias against black people. For every 9 people executed, 1 person on death row has been exonerated or have had their convictions overturned. African Americans are roughly 13% of our population, but make up 42% of those on death row. But this story at its heart is not just about those confounding numbers. It's about people. We speak to a woman still grieving because she believed her brother was unjustly executed.
He actually thought that the system would work because he didn't do anything wrong. So he had no reason to believe that he could ever be convicted of it, that he could ever be executed for something that he didn't do.
He was in the process of being in custody when the shots were fired.
Exactly. He did not pull a trigger. He did not have a gun.
The judge.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It used to be. What I do? Okay. Excuse me.
Tonight, the major announcement by President Biden moving up his nationwide COVID vaccination deadline by nearly 2 weeks. The president now saying every American adult will be eligible to receive the vaccine by April 19th. It comes as California, the state hardest hit by COVID, announces a target date to fully reopen. And the news tonight on Moderna, how long does its vaccine protection last? The police instructor who trained Derek Chauvin testifying that Chauvin did not use an authorized neck restraint on George Floyd. And what happened today when Floyd's friend, who was in the car with him as police approached, faced the judge. The Navy medic killed at a military base after shooting and injuring 2 sailors at a separate location. What we're learning. New surveillance of the man who rammed his car into police at the Capitol shortly before the attack. What it shows him buying. The heartbreaking video, a migrant boy saying he was abandoned near the border, his tearful plea to a patrol agent. Our series, The American Worker, as more return to the workplace. Can your company require you to get vaccinated? The new home of the All-Star Game revealed. And a hug more than a year in the making, inspiring America.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening, everyone. President Biden expressing concerns progress against COVID could be threatened by new variants has just announced he's moving up the vaccination timeline, now declaring all adults will be eligible for vaccinations as of April 19th. The president speaking to reporters late today, acknowledging that cases are rising again, his warning coming as health experts continue to debate if the country has entered a 4th wave of illness and what that looks like. In a few minutes, my exclusive conversation with the governor of New Jersey, one of the states trying to manage a troubling rise in cases. But if theirs is a cautionary tale, it is not being heeded by a growing number of states that tonight seem eager to move on. And that's where we start with Miguel Almaguer.
It was the state hit hardest by the deadly winter surge. Now California, the world's 5th largest economy, plans to fully reopen by June 15th, if all goes well.
We are seeing bright light at the end of the tunnel.
California's slow, measured approach, far different than the one unfolding in Texas. In striking defiance of CDC guidance, the Rangers hosted a sellout crowd of 38,000, making social distancing nearly impossible, and though masks were required, they were often not worn. The team holding a moment of silence for COVID victims and healthcare workers, though experts say it's events exactly like this that can jeopardize lives.
Right now, the problem is we still have a chunk of Americans who are high risk who have not gotten vaccinated.
Though Texas has seen a 19% drop in COVID cases, states in over half the country are recording a rise in infections. Minnesota's hospitalizations doubling in 5 weeks. In Michigan, the situation growing critical.
Hospitals filling up and the emergency department is filling up as well.
Hoping to quickly reach herd immunity, today the president says states should open vaccinations to all adults by April 19th, nearly 2 weeks earlier than his previous goal. Today, new research suggesting Moderna's vaccine, like Pfizer's, remains effective for at least 6 months. But even as the U.S. averages 3 million vaccinations a day with 169 million shots into arms so far, variants are fueling new worries. Still, states like New Jersey, with rising cases and hospitalizations, are already loosening more restrictions. The country eager to move forward while still facing the threat of its deadly past. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News.
And today I spent time in one of those states struggling with rising cases, New Jersey, with the second highest rated new infections per capita. In an NBC News exclusive, I spoke to New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy about what's happening there and why.
So we've got 17 different places in Newark right now.
I met up with New Jersey's governor as he visited a FEMA vaccination site in Newark today.
Is this number one? Is this first?
One of the battlegrounds in the state's urgent fight to reverse an increase in COVID infections.
Yeah, we rank highly, unfortunately. Densest state in America, densest region in America, a cold weather winter state, multi-generational families.
Are you in a new wave right now?
I think we are in a plateau. We're up somewhat over the past couple of weeks, but still down meaningfully from where we were in January.
Over the last 13 days, New Jersey has a nearly 13% increase in cases. Hit hard at the start of the pandemic, New Jersey under Governor Phil Murphy already has the highest COVID death toll per capita. Over 24,000 New Jerseyans have died, another 15 just yesterday. If this was happening at the beginning of the pandemic, you'd likely be adding restrictions, not reducing them. Is that a fair statement?
Well, certainly at the time we did a year ago, and that had a lot to do with the fact that none of us knew what hit us. I think you've got variants in our state. We're not really doing a whole lot of opening.
New Jersey recently eased capacity restrictions for indoor dining, entertainment venues, gyms, among others, but has moved more cautiously than many other states. Are the decisions now in terms of allowing half capacity in restaurants, for example, are those science-based or based on pressure from restaurant owners?
Now, we have nothing but sympathy for the restaurant industry as an example, which has been completely clobbered. But we're still making the decisions based on the data.
There have been some states that have largely thrown away, lifted all their restrictions and are doing better than New Jersey. Does that frustrate you?
I think it's because of less density and warmer weather, honestly. They're able to spread out more than we can, and they're able to live more of their lives outdoors than we can. It's a reason for us to remain sober and to double down on our efforts, and we'll continue to do that.
The state working to head off what models project is a worst case.
Worst case is 4,000 or 5,000 folks in the hospital. Our peak in the spring last year was just under 8,300.
New Jersey has administered more than 4.7 million vaccine doses, but has been slower than many states in expanding eligibility. So you have, New Jersey now has dropped the eligibility to age 55 and over, so as of yesterday, you qualify. Governor Murphy does not foresee tightened restrictions in New Jersey's future.
the bottom of his tool bag should cases continue to rise. Maybe a plea from the heart.
We know that you're fatigued. We know you're sick of this, but please, God, keep doing the basic stuff. Get vaccinated. Get tested if you need to be.
In line with President Biden's new directive, Governor Murphy says New Jersey will open up vaccinations to all its residents over the age of 16 on April 19th. And here's where we stand tonight. More than 108 million Americans have received at least one vaccine dose. The number of hospitalized remains steady at about 34,000. And make a plan so you'll be ready when it's your turn for your vaccination. Visit planyourvaccine.com for more. In just 60 seconds, a shooting at a Navy office. The suspect then shot and killed at a nearby military base. And the heartbreaking scene as a border agent comes across a migrant child abandoned. The use of force by police and how much is necessary was the key focus today at the murder trial of Derek Chauvin, a former police officer charged in the death of George Floyd. Gabe Gutierrez is in Minneapolis.
With former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin taking notes, today prosecutors drilled down on use of force policies.
When it's safe and feasible, that we shall de-escalate.
Bringing officer after officer to the stand.
You want to use the least amount of force necessary to meet your objectives.
Lieutenant Johnny Mersil oversees the department's use of force training.
Say, for example, the subject was under control and handcuffed. Would this be authorized?
I would say no.
But Chauvin's attorney, Eric Nelson, doubled down, arguing that an angry crowd of bystanders distracted him and that George Floyd died from drug use and underlying medical conditions. Not the 9.5 minutes Chauvin pinned Floyd down with his knee. During cross-examination, Nelson also brought up this training picture that shows an officer restraining a suspect with his knee across his shoulders and neck.
If that person were to be handcuffed and circumstances dictated, the officer would be permitted to continue to hold his knee in that same position. Agreed?
I would say yes. However, we've cautioned officers that be mindful of the neck area and to look for the shoulder for placement.
Hanging over the case, a potential key witness. Today, Maurice Hall appeared remotely out of the jury's view. He's the passenger in Floyd's SUV seen here in this body camera video. His lawyer says he'd invoke the Fifth Amendment to avoid questions about whether he provided Floyd drugs.
He has been provided no immunity, no protection for his testimony whatsoever.
The judge asked both sides to draft a list of limited questions for review. Also expected later this week, crucial testimony from the county medical examiner. For the Floyd family, a painstaking process.
It's like trying to squeeze water out of a rock right now. But my family, we have the faith as small as a mustard seed. We're going to get through this.
Gabe, I think it's fair to say some of the testimony today was more technical than some of the more emotional accounts we've seen. How was the jury reacting?
Well, Lester, according to a pool reporter inside the courtroom, one juror appeared to be sleeping at one point. Several others yawning. Lester?
All right, Gabe, thank you. Police and military investigators are searching for a motive this evening after a Navy corpsman shot and wounded 2 sailors in Frederick, Maryland, before he was shot and killed at a nearby military base. Tom Costello has late details.
It happened at 8:20 this morning.
All units, 1043, city is operating on an active shooter event.
2 Navy sailors shot at a Navy office in Frederick, Maryland, an hour outside of Washington. Police say the 38-year-old suspect, Navy hospital corpsman Fantahun Gurma Walden Sembet, quickly sped away.
We have a male subject in an army-type suit with an AR-15.
Minutes later, breaching the gate at Fort Detrick Military Base and leading base police on a chase before they opened fire. The suspect's car riddled with bullets.
They were able to stop him in a parking lot, then brandished a weapon, and our police department was able to neutralize the subject.
Both victims were airlifted to a trauma center in Baltimore, where tonight one is in critical condition, the other just released from the hospital. While the victims and the suspect all worked at Fort Detrick, it is not clear whether they knew each other.
Every time we turn on the TV, we're seeing something like this happen, and now it's happening in our backyard, so no one wants to see this type of thing.
Tonight, federal, military, local, and state police are still searching for evidence and answers. Tom Costello, NBC News, Washington.
4 days after that deadly car attack on U.S. Capitol police officers, new video shows the suspect buying the knife he waved at police before he was shot and killed. The store owner says the knife seen in police photos matches the one the suspect purchased. And now the migrant surge at the border and the searing new video of a young boy whose face we want you to see, telling a Border Patrol agent he was abandoned in the desert trying to cross into the U.S. without his parents. Andrea Mitchell has that story.
It's heartbreaking to watch. A young boy approaching a U.S. Border Patrol agent last Thursday in the middle of the desert, alone and sobbing. Can you help me, he says. I was coming with a group and they abandoned me and I don't know where they are. They left you alone, the agent asks. They abandoned me, he says, adding his parents were not with him and he was afraid of being kidnapped. It is just the latest shocking video of unaccompanied migrant children crossing the border. Last week, surveillance cameras capturing a smuggler tossing 3- and 5-year-old toddler girls from Ecuador over a 14-foot border fence, then running away. Incredibly, the two sisters were uninjured, part of the record migrant surge after President Biden changed border policy, allowing unaccompanied children to stay in the U.S.
We are encountering so many children, 100 a day, here in the El Paso region that are just turning themselves in.
There are currently more than 19,000 unaccompanied migrant children in U.S. custody. More than 4,000 held by the Border Patrol in severely overcrowded detention facilities like this one in Donna, Texas, where they're packed shoulder to shoulder in a pandemic. Tonight, the Border Patrol is telling Telemundo that the boy is safe at one of their facilities. The next step would be to reach his parents. The record-breaking number of unaccompanied children continue to cross the border. Lester.
All right, Andrea Mitchell. And then there's this. Human rights groups say the children of Myanmar are paying a terrible price at the hands of security forces in a horrifying crackdown following the military coup 2 months ago. Keir Simmons is following the situation there.
7-year-old Chim Yu-chit was shot by a soldier in her own home. Myanmar's youngest victim of a brutal military crackdown. But tonight, human rights groups say it's stirring memories, including an alarming number of children.
Well over 40 children who have been killed.
The 7-year-old's family say she died in her father's arms. How does a 7-year-old girl get killed by the military?
The military barged into her house. Obviously, the young girl was alarmed and ran towards her father, and one of the soldiers just shot her.
Myanmar's military holding a parade, while parents cry over caskets. An 11-year-old was buried with her toys. A 1-year-old baby wounded in the eye by a rubber bullet. The ruthlessness caught on camera when this teen on a motorbike was shot in cold blood. The death toll of pro-democracy demonstrators since the coup 2 months ago, now 550. Killed by a military armed from abroad by countries including China and Russia.
These governments have blood on their hands, and the blood on their hands is from the Myanmar children.
Many governments, including the US, have demanded Myanmar return to democracy. Tonight, the protesters are vowed to stay in the streets.
That's a lot to take. All right, Keir, thank you. After working from home, can companies require you to return to the office? We're back now with our series, The American Worker. As vaccinations rise, a growing number of employees are returning to the office. But what will your workplace look like, and can your company require you to get vaccinated? Here's Jolene Kent.
Companies plan to bring employees back to the office. The reality of returning is setting in.
It is a little nerve-wracking. If my company forces me to go back, I'm going to try to look for another job.
And the questions are piling up.
How are you going to keep us safe?
Have people been vaccinated?
Can an employer require you to come back to work if you're getting the job done just fine at home?
There's no reason that employer can't require employees to return back to work if they think that would be most effective, even for employees who have been working productively and efficiently.
While mass social distancing and reduced capacities will likely be required, what about vaccines? 3 have been authorized by the FDA for emergency use, and full approvals are expected. But can private companies mandate them?
The law does permit an employer to require employees receive even a vaccine that only has an EUA, whether fully approved or not. you have to make reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities or sincerely held religious beliefs.
Myanmar is Burma, a country in Asia.
We installed UVC lights, which as air comes into the building, it kills all airborne pathogens.
Borders India, Bangladesh, China, Laos, and Thailand.
A design firm in Los Angeles. They're also installing massive fans.
Yangon, formerly Rangoon, the country's largest city, is home to bustling markets, numerous parks and lakes, and the towering gilded Shwedagon Pagoda, which contains Buddhist relics and dates to the 6th century.
Really understanding what to do in the office when you're coming in 2 days a week. What were we prioritizing in our work process?
One popular new strategy for employers: no more personal desks. Instead, reserve an empty desk ahead of time on an app.
Your first stop at the office is actually a locker where you pick up your own keyboard and mouse. Then you head to the already sanitized desk and get to work.
And these changes will last far beyond the pandemic.
It definitely was a long-term investment. You know, I think for us, we really wanted to embrace the future of redefining what work could be.
Myanmar's natural resources include oil and gas, various minerals, precious stones and gems, timber and forest products.
A lot of companies, big and small, tell us they're asking their employees what they want and need in order to feel safe.
Of these, natural gas, rubies, jade, and timber logs are the most valuable and currently provide a substantial portion of national income.
A lot of adjustments in the future. All right, Joe, thanks. This summer's All-Star Game has a new home. The MLB announced the game will be playing in Denver after moving it out of Atlanta in protest of Georgia's GOP-backed new law restricting voting rights. Many Republicans have blasted the decision. Today, President Biden told Georgia and other states looking to pass similar laws to, quote, smarten up. Up next for us, the hug they waited a year for, inspiring America. With so many separated by the pandemic for so long, we want to show you what it was like for one couple in Colorado, together again at last. Here's Kristen Dong.
For the past year,
I'm here for you, honey.
this was as close as Carl Waicheath and his wife Donna could get.
We'll try to get through this.
Donna has late-stage Alzheimer's and has been confined to a long-term care facility.
She's the love of my life, so.
Carl has dutifully visited 3 times a week, working hard to bring her a smile.
There you go.
So when Colorado announced it would allow visitors,
Ready? I'm ready.
Carl was giddy, waiting to see his high school sweetheart and wife of 55 years.
I get to give you a hug.
Our Denver affiliate KUSA with cameras rolling for their first hug in a year.
She held my hand the whole time.
Donna is now nonverbal, but she hummed along as her husband sang.
You make me happy when the skies are gray.
Even a pandemic, no match for true love. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News.
Please don't take my sunshine away.
As sweet a moment as they come. That's Nightly News for this Tuesday. Thank you for watching. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night. Hey NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching. Time to the new CDC warning, younger Americans fueling the rise in COVID across the nation as air travel breaks pandemic records over the holiday weekend. A debate tonight among health officials. Are we already in a 4th wave? The CDC director saying most new cases are among younger adults and a growing number of clusters linked to youth sports. Why are cases climbing among kids? Plus the double mutant variant found in the U.S. What we've learned about that. The Minneapolis police chief who fired Derek Chauvin testifying at his trial. The chief saying Chauvin absolutely violated department policy by kneeling on George Floyd's neck. And the ER doctor who tried to resuscitate Floyd, what he said about the cause of death. The state of emergency in Florida, the toxic reservoir in danger of failing and unleashing a 20-foot wall of water. Hundreds of homes evacuated. The race against time. The new image, the knife used by the attacker at the Capitol on Friday, the search for his motive in the new plea from the police union. The soaring price for homes, what to do if you're in the market. And our new series, The American Worker, how the pandemic has reshaped.
I don't understand how a reservoir can release a 20-foot wall of water. I just don't understand that.
Good evening. It is starting to look like 2019 again in a growing number of states that are rapidly shedding the restraints of the COVID pandemic. Those states haven't beaten the coronavirus, but with more and more shots in arms, there is a general sense that we're through the worst. At least that's one view. The alternate view is that we're fooling ourselves as another wave of sickness builds on the horizon. Tonight we're sorting through mixed messages from top disease experts about whether we're about to be overwhelmed by another surge of COVID cases. The wild card? Variants of the virus, including a new double mutant strain. Tonight, in the race to stay ahead, at least 107 million Americans have received at least one dose of vaccine. Let's get the latest now from Miguel Almaguer.
Tonight, new signs of trouble are on the horizon as air travelers and COVID cases are both on the rise. Leading up to the Easter holiday, travel spiking more than 1,300% compared to last year. Many Americans ignoring CDC guidance to avoid non-essential travel after the agency just said those who are fully vaccinated can fly at lower risk.
I'm not sure of what the guidelines are specifically.
The confusion over travel comes amid mixed messaging over a fourth surge. As the U.S. surpasses 550,000 deaths, there is growing debate over if the nation has or hasn't entered another crippling wave.
We're just at the beginning of this surge. You're not going to see a true fourth wave of infection.
COVID cases are rising in well over half the nation. Variants spreading fast in parts of Massachusetts and Ohio, while a new double mutant strain
I'm gonna
is
stop
now in
recording and upload
California.
this.